My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask pardon for my sins and the grace to make these moments of prayer fruitful. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. It might be something of a surprise, but I actually find today's gospel almost shocking. Let me explain. I was brought up on a house a few kilometers outside a small city. We were nearby the beach and also nearby a fairly decent-sized mountain. When I was a teenager, my friends and I would occasionally go to the mountain. We would go up there for a day, maybe go for a weekend, or on special occasions we'd go there even for a week. But of course we had all the training to do it. We were educated from about 14 years old, and all the equipment that you needed to have and the precautions that you needed to take. So we would go there to spend a few days and with all the gear. Not that we always needed it, but you knew that it was always there just in case. We knew we didn't want to end up being one of those people who ended up in the opposite situation, where they didn't have the gear and they needed it because habitually on that mountain it ended badly. So what, you might think, does this have to do with today's gospel? It's the gospel where Jesus appoints 72 others and sends them out ahead of him in pairs. Now, just imagine this scene if you would. These disciples have seen the great miracles. They have seen the multiplication of the loaves and fishes. They have seen demons cast out. Their encounter with Jesus has probably changed their lives. They have realized they have forgiveness of sins, that they are called by God, but at the same time they don't fully understand who this Jesus figure is. They just know that he has what they want and they're following him. All of a sudden Jesus one day calls the crowd together, picks out 72 of them and says to them, now you are going to go with my message ahead of me. Now, that must have been a huge honor at the time. It must have been something almost quite inconceivable to think that I'm the one who's going to take your message. But then perhaps even more crazy is what comes next, because sure, Jesus tells them why they're going. He says, the harvest is rich, but the laborers are few. So ask the Lord of the harvest to send laborers to his harvest. That makes sense. But then he says, I'm sending you out like lambs among wolves. Well, that doesn't sound so good. These disciples have seen all the miracles. They've seen even the impossible happen before their eyes. And then Jesus, the one in whom they hope, tells them, I'm sending you out like lambs before wolves. First thing, it starts to sound kind of crazy. But then he tells them, carry no purse, carry no haversack, no sandals, salute no one on the road. Now you think, anyone's going to carry the minimum, the bare necessities for a journey. That's where my mountain experience comes in. You say, well, look, you're not necessarily going to need everything, but you need to know you're going to be safe. And here's Jesus telling them absolutely the opposite. Look, everything that you would normally take on a journey, don't take it. Leave it behind. In fact, don't even think about taking it, because I'm commanding you not to do so. Now, the natural response from that would be to look at him and say, but Jesus, what are you saying? Are you serious? You want me to go out like a lamb before wolves? You want me to go out like a lamb before wolves and without even the minimum necessary equipment? But of course, in context, what is it that Jesus is trying to communicate to those disciples and at the same time trying to communicate to us? He's telling us, depend on me, not on human means. To put it in a modern-day context, he's telling us, don't expect fruit because you invest in multi-million-dollar advertising campaigns. That's not what I want, he says. Depend on me. It's not the money you have. It's not the equipment you bring. It's not even the efficacy of your words. Depend on me. Jesus, I certainly have to tell you, that's a lesson I find very hard to learn. Because everything in my culture, everything in our culture really tells me, take care of yourself. Now, obviously my culture's not telling me that about spiritual things, but But even though it's only talking about material things, that mentality carries over to my spiritual life as well. It happens for all of us, I think. It leads us to think even about our spiritual life in material terms, that we need to take care of ourselves. We need to make sure that we have everything that we need. And yet you, Lord, you're telling us something different. You're just telling us, depend on me. Putting ourselves alongside Jesus Christ like that, we learn what it is to trust. And trust involves risk. Jesus is telling us these things for exactly the same reasons that he said them to the disciples when he sent them out. He wants us to learn to trust. But trust is difficult because it means relinquishing control. It means not trying to ensure that we have everything taken care of ourselves. Trust, in the end, involves risk, even when God is concerned. But the flip side is that when we trust, when we risk on what someone else tells us, we grow in faith in that person, humanly and spiritually. The more we trust God, the more we risk everything on him, the more we grow in faith in him, the more we grow close to him, the more we love him. I saw a very human version of this once when years ago I was on a camp with some young boys. There were a group of children around about 8, 9, 10 years old with their fathers, and then another group of older boys, 16, 17, 18 years old, who were helping to run activities. Well, we were there, and one of these young fellows, about 8 years old, was hesitating before undertaking a challenge. To be honest, I don't even remember what the challenge was. It was something like jumping off a platform into the water. And his older brother was there, about 16 years old, encouraging him to go ahead. The little boy was nervous, he wasn't sure, the water looked very deep, he looked very high up, and I will never forget the look on this boy's face when he turned and looked up at his older brother with a smile that at the same time expressed fear and trust, and said to him, "I'm just not sure." The look on that boy's face expressed everything you could hope for a relationship between a younger and an older brother. Smile, hope, expectation, the need of assurance. And what did the older boy say? Just go for it. The young fellow did, and he loved having done it. That's what trust gives us. Trust leads us to be daring. It leads us to do things that we ordinarily wouldn't even consider, to do things that humanly might seem impossible. And having done them, we gain the experience of having achieved it, whatever it is. And that's exactly it. Think about it. What would those 72 disciples have felt when they returned? They must have been absolutely elated at what they saw happen before their eyes. And they would have known by the mere fact of not having taken anything themselves, by the mere fact of having done everything on trust, that it came from God himself, that it wasn't merely that they had achieved something, but that God had done it through them. Well, Jesus, we desperately want that experience too. It's not just that we want to experience having done stuff, but talking to you now, we tell you we want to have the experience of having done things with you and through you. We want to be able to return like those 72 disciples, overjoyed with what has been done through us, by you. But you more than anyone else know that we're still learning to trust you. And that for all the things that happen in our lives, whatever it happens to be. In the spiritual realm, many times that might be something to do with apostolate, or it might be something to do with our own interior life. It might mean daring to go on a retreat. It might mean daring to confront or overcome a sin that is confronting us. But we do it all with trust in God. And it's precisely that trust that gives us the daring to go ahead. As we finish our prayer, we can turn again to the Blessed Virgin Mary and ask her to fill us with that daring. She knows more than anyone else everything that God wants to give us, everything that he wants to undertake in our lives. And we ask her help to follow with trust, with faith, with daring, so that God can bring it to fruition. I thank you, my God, for the good resolutions, affections, and inspirations which you have communicated to me in this time of prayer. I ask your assistance in putting them into effect. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me.